My name is Anthony Lucidi, Tony, Lucidi Technical Solutions. I'm a small IT consulting company specializing in application development, website development, marketing, digital assets, social media, and also helping companies to better utilize their existing software to improve overall business strategy, hence the reason why Microsoft Office 365 came to play. So I'm going to turn my camera off. I apologize, but it takes up too much resources. So as Manny has talked about, as the software business solutions team, we were trying to figure out a good way to, we knew Office 365 was a great tool. We saw a lot of uptake in Teams utilization, a lot of interest in Teams when COVID came about. So what we wanted to do was like come up with an idea that basically took every experience that we've had. I've been in this business for 35 years. I was an Estee Lauder for 18 years. I was the head of the collaboration solutions team in Estee Lauder, and obviously SharePoint was my baby, was my tool. So I'm getting feedback. Andrea, could you mute everybody?
Yes. Better?
Yeah, definitely.
Anthony, you have to unmute.
Tony, you're muted also.
I was just going to select unmute and it wouldn't.
I'm sorry. I just find that funny. The guy giving Office 365 forgot to unmute himself while he was talking. Oh, man, you couldn't get any better other than that. All right. So anyway, so what we wanted to do was, first of all, have a series, right? What we want to do is take this journey through a small business, right? And because of COVID, Teams seems to be the big jumping point for Office 365. That's why people get involved. Most of them don't even realize that the other back-end stuff, OneDrive, SharePoint, PowerApps, PowerAutomate, most people don't even know those suites of tools exist. So what we wanted to do was, again, come up with this algorithm of, this one company and their struggles. And my hope today is not that you're going to remember everything that I'm talking about. You're going to remember one idea. A thought's going to kick into your head and say, we could use that. I saw this guy, and you're going to reach out to Manny and say, Manny, the guy who gave that presentation, I don't remember his name, but I do remember him showing X, Y, Z. That's what I'm looking for today. I'm looking for people who have the interest in Teams, and I'm trying to just spark an idea to see how you can better utilize it. So I'm going to move along quickly just to get through some of the slide. I got to give some background information, and I'm going to just dive right into Teams. So what did we do? We came up with a company called Splash Tees. I don't know why T-shirt. I think it was Chris's idea. He threw up a T-shirt company. I said, good to go, and here we are. So what is Splash Tees? Splash Tees is a typical small business on the island. What are their what are their current issues, right? So from a company profile, and we've seen this. This is representative of many of our clients. It's a local business who is currently experiencing growth pains. Everybody does it. They try to grow. We don't have collaboration. We're really in an issue here. They have outgrown their manufacturing capabilities, so they're outgrowing and their sales order process. So now the sales are coming in quicker than the manufacturer can handle, and there's a lot of tension between these two teams. The teams are extremely siloed. This seems to be rampant in business today. Sales team is doing its own thing. Manufacturing team is doing its own thing. And people pick up Teams because they say, oh, they're going to collaborate. And it's just chatting. Most people just use Teams as a chat and a potential file share. So again, this is the problem that they have. And they decided to implement Microsoft Office 365, but they really don't know how to utilize it. So what we're seeing a lot is people go to their tech guy, and I put tech guy in quotes. Could be an MSP. They could have an internal guy that has some technology. So those people know how to implement it. Those people know how to secure it. Those people know how to set it up. Those people know how to manage it. But who's showing the small business how to utilize it? And that's the problem that we're seeing, and that's why we have this particular company profile. All right, so in this event, so this is a series of events. Your feedback is going to be crucial in understanding how we're going to move these events forward. So again, we wanted to start with Teams because we see that that's where a lot of people focus. there are two places where I believe companies focus for Office 365 as an initial jump. It's either Teams or it's utilizing an intranet style of approach. So they want to have a corporate intranet, they want to have multiple sites, and that's what they use to start kicking off the O365. But because most of our customers are using Teams, this is what this event is. We're going to talk about setting up a Teams channel, team security, the user interface, the tabs, the apps, and most importantly, the document library, the metadata, and the search and filtering. All right.
And just if I can interject, one of the reasons why in our planning we decided to utilize Office 365 as a general platform is that a lot of businesses already have it. They're already buying licenses from Microsoft
Correct.
monthly, and everything except the Exchange only version of it has some form of these applications available with them. So it seemed like a good, very economical way for a small business to gain functionality that they may not even know is there on a product that they're already buying. So I'm sorry to just jump in there.
No,
Tony.
no, Manny, you're making a key. One of my slides is going to showcase how many businesses I get called in. We want you to look at Teams. Okay, they set me up. We have Office. Great. They send me a Zoom invite. And my first question is, why are we on Zoom? Well, what do you mean? That's our meeting platform. And I'm like, well, you do realize that Teams has, and well, we prefer Zoom because of this, and we prefer Zoom because of that. The reality is, why pay for two tools? It doesn't make sense. You have Teams, and what I'm going to also try to focus a lot on here is adoption, right? So if a CEO says, I want to use Teams, you're going to hear grumbling all the way down the stack. If you can't showcase to your team how Teams is beneficial, then you're not going to get the adoption. You're going to get people using it for chat. You're going to get bare minimum usage out of it. And they're going to go back to WhatsApp, and they're going to go back to their device texting, and that's going to be their collaboration tool. So part of this is also to showcase how you get adoption from the overall team. Okay, so I wanted to pause here on this. This is basically, we've developed a process. When a company comes to us, we developed a process on engagement for teams. This looks like a lot, but what I really want to focus more on this slide is just basically having a strategy. What I've seen is companies come on board, they hand teams out, and everybody goes their own way. So I have Team A with 19 channels because they've just so subdivided it. I got Team B with a basic chat, some file share that has 400 files and 25, 30 folders. That's almost unencompassing. What this questionnaire does is allows us to pull back and say, what is it you're looking for? So these questions are guided to develop a strategy. The biggest quote here, one size doesn't fit all. That is absolutely correct. You could be very satisfied with a team of 5 using it for chatting. I'm okay with that. But if you have a larger company, you want more robust, and you want to do business process improvements, you may want to go a different route. I will tell you, I don't care if you're a team of 1 or 15. I'm a very small team, and I utilize Office 365 in my day-to-day conversations with people, and I use all the apps. PowerApps, I have a mobile app out there. I have all of the different things that I utilize. The point for this slide is understand a strategy. It's not just throw teams in and run. It's that will be failure. I can promise you that will be failure, and you're not going to get the adoption that you're looking for. So again, I have it on the screen. If you guys want a copy of this, I'd be more than happy to give you the copy so that you can start your process. But again, strategy is a key point here. All right, I'm going to run through this quickly. This is the background of the company. All right, here's the org structure: 27 employees, 5 departments. You got sales, accounting, HR, manufacturing. Current solutions. Due to the siloed organization, the teams have developed their own various tools for collaboration: Dropbox, Google Suite, Zoom, WebEx, WhatsApp. You guys are all familiar with these. I'm sure there's a bunch of you on this call that are shaking your head going, yep, been there, done that, seen it. And this is a problem because from a support standpoint, from a collaboration standpoint, this becomes complicated. Okay, issues. Let's go over basic issues. Project management. They're using an Excel worksheet to track their contracts. right? I'm going to showcase that. They're only tracking the current task. They don't have any ability for analytics. So we said this task was due. How long did it take? What was it on time? Unless someone's monitoring that, well, theoretically, if you utilize Office 365, you can get that automated, where it can automatically track it for you and then do an analysis and say what tasks were late and why were they late and so forth and so on. Again, sales lead. Company doesn't have a CRM solution. A lot of small companies can't afford Salesforce or whatever CRM tools out there. You could utilize Office 365 for that. All right, they've investigated many popular solutions, but they're just too expensive. Again, here you are having Office 365 that you could utilize for that, and they can't. So they're using Excel worksheets and things like that. Collaboration, this is a big one. Extremely siloed, no collaborations. I got the sales team complaining that the manufacturing team is delivering. Manufacturing team is saying the salespeople are giving them crap POs. HR department, I got one HR person. They're there for the rest of the people. They have to get all of this collaboration, all this documentation. It's very frustrating. So basically, I'm hoping that there's a couple of you out there that say, yeah, this is resonating with me, one or two of these points. And every one of this background is a combination of companies that we've actually dealt with. All right, so the solution, we're going to use Teams. We're going to start with Teams. Big key here, Teams as a dashboard. So if you're looking, let me go back. Hold 1 second. I screwed up. Okay. So if you're going to use Teams and you want adoption, I highly recommend using Teams as a dashboard. So make it a single go-to tool that people will utilize for their day-to-day operational things, not just for chatting and talking about files. And I'm going to show you how you could possibly do that. Security, big thing here. Security is important. That's why the questionnaire, that questionnaire helps us identify security groups, who has access, who has reads, who has writes, who can delete. I don't know if people know that there is the ability for a SharePoint document library to say, you can only view, you can't delete, you can't update. So I can have the accounting team expose some data and yet not have to worry about the world changing the data, because they'll only have view capabilities. You can set it up so that nobody can delete. Delete has to go through an approval task, things of that nature. Project tracking, a big one that a lot of companies face. They use project, but it just sometimes just doesn't have the configuration and customization they need. Accounting department uses QuickBooks as their accounting tool. So they're constantly involved with that. Sales department uses Excel. Again, what I see a lot of is companies get Office 365. They use Outlook, they use Excel, and they use Word. That's it. Now, the problem is they're not even integrating them. You know that Outlook can open an Excel file, do something, and send an email. Excel could pull data from a Microsoft worksheet. Microsoft Word could pull data from Excel. And even better yet, Excel can pull data from SharePoint and vice versa. So most companies start with the basics, but don't go anywhere further. Continue on with sales. They have a document library specific to work orders. Library will have metadata for, they don't have metadata. They're trying to implement it. HR team has 2 channels, one for everyone in the company. And then they also have like a training one we'll go over. Manufacturing, they want to put a calendar of release dates and things of that nature. So these are the solutions that we're looking to implement. All right, so I'm going to run through this real quick. Basic team document libraries, we spoke about it. Metadata, search, I'm going to go into that a little bit too. Tabbed interface, we'll show you that. Collaboration, everybody knows about the chats, the video calls, the calendars. I will tell you that there are phone systems that tie into the Microsoft products, that basically you could call somebody utilizing the contact information coming from Teams. You can make a phone call directly. There's a bunch of different things. Apps, there's hundreds of apps. I want to focus here on apps because be very careful about apps. Make sure you have an app strategy, because there's a lot of third-party vendors, a lot of good apps out there, and we'll see how many there are. There are hundreds. What you don't want to do is get an app into critical path and have the app fall apart, or have the app manufacturer say, well, they no longer support it. I highly recommend. There's a ton of Microsoft products that Microsoft has included in their app portfolio, and we'll see that. I'm not going to get into the next event right now. All right, so let's go right into Teams. Does anybody have any questions at this point? I want to just stop and see if anybody has any questions, or raise your hand if there's any issues. Okay. All right. So here's the teams. So I have accounting. I have one team for each of the general audiences. Okay. Some of them will just have a general tab, a channel. So you have teams, and then within those teams, multiple channels. What I will warn you about is I've seen people that have a ton of channels. Some people have a channel for every project. Some people have channels for all sorts of different things. I'm not against it. What I am saying is this should be a strategy. You need to have a conversation with your team about how you want to develop channels, and there should be a process on reviewing that. What I want to showcase here is what I've done is I've set up groups. So Microsoft 365 allows for setting up groups. I highly recommend using groups. Many of the people who we've seen, many of the companies we've seen use teams, they assign people individually, which now becomes a nightmare. If, Bob needs to be in accounting, and he also needs to be in the executive suite, but he also needs to be part of HR. It gets very complicated. If you set up groups, you're setting yourself for an easier user management, but also you're setting the future for involvement with SharePoint, because those groups are in the back end being set up as SharePoint groups. And then what happens is I can turn, I'm sorry, go ahead. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. It's just telling me somebody exited. So theoretically, in the accounting team channel files, if I don't want manufacturing being able to change, all I do is I go into that document library and I set it so that manufacturing group can only view. It's a 2-second ordeal. If manufacturing has 30 people, I'm not setting it up for 30 people. So I think you get the idea. We're going to go back to team. So I'm going to start from the top, work my way down. Each team is going to have more and more functionality until we get down to the end here. So what you'll see across the top here are these tabs. The default tabs are posts, files, and wiki. Post obviously is just, this is where the chat happens, post information. Files, you see here for accounting, I have balance sheet files and I have February closing files. Now, obviously I didn't have the time in the world to put 400 files out here, but you can see that eventually this could get very convoluted. Now, could you add a folder? Sure you can. What I've seen is when I first look at a lot of companies with this screen, it's all folders. How do I find the balance sheet for 2022? I got to go into the balance sheet folder and I got to hunt for it. And if somebody named it incorrectly, well, guess what? I'm in trouble. So there's no metadata here. If you click on a file, it opens up. This is, again, a function of Teams. It opens the file up. It then allows you to edit the file. I will make a warning here. This is using Excel on the web. It's not using the native client. So what happens is if you have a lot of customization in here using Microsoft Forms tools, they won't work here. So be clear on that. Now, it's not to say that they can't open it up locally. They can. What I'm trying to highlight here is you can open it directly right from the files. All right. I mentioned that they have QuickBooks. So what I've done here is I've just included QuickBooks. Oh, it's going to want me to sign in. All right. Bear with me 1 second while I sign in. Don't worry. I'm not going to expose. I think internet's freaking out right about now. Tony, what the heck are you doing? I'm not going to expose any of my data. I'm just going to showcase that it does work. So right now, again, the beauty of this is if accounting is using QuickBooks, and this is the place where they can now go to QuickBooks, they can say, okay, you know what, on the balance sheet, I want to talk about this data, go back to QuickBooks, look at the data. You could see already that I want to improve the adoption. So I want to have this. Now, if they want to use whatever they want, go right ahead. But you see that you can include a web here. Another thing I wanted to showcase is the Excel piece of it. Now, this tab opens up the Excel worksheet that we just saw. So if you're focusing on a worksheet that you have that's constantly being utilized, and why would you want the person to go to files, open the folders, look for it? If this is the one we're talking about, then you can actually assign it directly as a tab, and the team can now collaborate off of this directly, off of this tab. So again, I'm trying to showcase the different tabs that you can. So let's look at some of the apps. Okay, I'm just going to scroll through to show the hundreds and hundreds of apps that you have. And what's happening is companies are starting to see the need for this. So they're putting all of these plugins in these apps. So just for the ones that we're going to be showcasing today, there's the Excel, there's the website, forms. We're going to talk about forms. It's an important piece of this. SharePoint, channel, calendar. We've done that too. But you get the idea where you can include these things as part of the adoption to make them part of your overall day-to-day process. Okay, so that's the accounting. Let's go to the sales. All right, so what I want to showcase here in sales is, here's the sales file. These are the POs. These are the POs that manufacturing is complaining about. They don't have enough data. Again, no metadata. What I want to showcase here is the search capability. Now, I'm going to point out the good and bad of Teams. If I try to search for, if we look at this PO, you'll notice that there's a customer ID of T045. You see that, right? That's an Excel worksheet. It's right there. If I try to search in Teams for that, the interface doesn't really allow it. Okay, but there's an alternative here, and this is going to this is going to bring up a better point. If you open in SharePoint, again, all these team files is actually a SharePoint document library. If you open it in SharePoint, and now I do a search for T045, you'll notice right away it comes up. So this is an important search feature that I think people forget. This literally looked inside the file and found that word. So if you use the Excel products, they natively are full search within the document itself. That's an extremely important fact to remember when you're trying to search. What I also want to show you is that this PDF has the same client. The problem is this PDF was created as an image. So be very careful when a lot of companies use PDFs, and I understand. If this PDF was created from Excel, it would be internally searchable. But because the person who created this PDF did it a different way, it never found this. So it's another thing to be aware of. I highly recommend, if you're in Office 365, use the Office 365 tools. You'll get better integration. Okay, so let's go back to Teams. Okay, what I wanted to show here is the sales team also uses some outside vendors when they want their T-shirt printed. So they have a bunch of links. So again, to increase adoption from the team, we created a page in SharePoint, a web page, custom page in SharePoint that has all the links for them. So again, I want to force people here. So now that I'm here, I'm looking up a file, I'm seeing something, I want to go to Vistaprint, I click on Vistaprint, opens up Vistaprint site, and now I can make my order and move on. So again, trying to highlight the collaboration side of it. Now, this is a standard page. This took me all of, I'm going to say 5 minutes. There is a whole WYSIWYG, there's a whole UI that's around designing. I don't want to get into that today. We will eventually, if you guys want this path to keep going, we will eventually go into how do you create a page like this. But again, I'm just showcasing it so that you can see the possibilities. The more information you have here, the more adoption you're going to have. The final one I want to talk about is HR. I put different things in HR here. So again, we see HR, we see files. So these are, the basic HR files. You'll see no metadata here. Okay, so if I wanted to find a file about something specific, I got no metadata. I can't filter this. I got to look at the title. And I got to figure out what the title means. Very, very unproductive. And we're going to get into further on that in just a minute. What I also wanted to showcase is here's the HR homepage. Now, this was created in SharePoint. Again, I'm trying to showcase that if you push people here, you trying to get Teams adoption, what you could do is you could force this. And then once you get full blown on SharePoint, and you can actually just remove the tab and now say use the corporate intranet. So you can see that there's also a transitional period that you can utilize these functionality for in order to get more of the adoption. What I wanted to showcase here, again, driving traffic from an HR. Here's my Edward Jones account. This is where I would go in. I would log in. Again, just to showcase what you can do. The next one is the vacation request. This is important. This is a Microsoft Forms tool. This took me actually, there was a vacation request template. So this didn't take me at all any long. So again, I want to drive traffic here. So this is a simple form to request a vacation. Now, when you submit the form, right? So let's do supervisor's name. I'm going to do Manny Morales. Vacation days 5. Dates requested 05, 02 through 8. And I submit it. What I want to show you is if we open it up in SharePoint. So now I'm going to go to the SharePoint site where that form was created. And where is it? Oh, I got to go to Forms, Microsoft Forms. Sorry. What I'm trying to showcase here is that the data is stored in the form itself. Okay, which really, how does that help you? How do you, somebody has to keep going in his form and looking at the data and seeing the responses. Okay, this isn't really productive. What I will tell you is I can connect this to SharePoint. So now I connect this to SharePoint. I put a workflow associated with that vacation request now goes to the person who's my supervisor and sends them an email and says, hey, you have a vacation approval, and assigns them a task. And then when that person approves it, the task is closed out. It goes back to the employee saying your vacation has been approved. It could even update a calendar. So the important part of showing this forms here was showing the possibility of interaction, something very simple from the back end of Teams to a solution. And again, this solution would take no more than a few hours. Now, I get it. Some of you aren't technically, but I will tell you, look at the forms generation tool. It's very easy. This was a template. This was literally sitting out there, and it's a template for me to pick up. All right. Now we're going to get down into the document library here and some of the metadata. So employee training. So what I did here was, again, we have the 3. I wanted to put up a training calendar. So I wanted to showcase the calendar option in Teams. So we have these different training that we want the employees to take. You'd be able to join in to any one of these meetings. What I want to showcase is, again, okay, hold on, let me bring over my calendar. Bear with me one second. Yeah, this is moving slow. Okay, what I want to showcase here is that they're on my calendar. Teams. So this is showcasing the integration between Microsoft Teams and the other Microsoft products. So this will show up in my Outlook calendar. What I also wanted to showcase here is metadata, right? So these are the documents that we have for training. So what I've done here is I've included a document type, a technology, and a class, right? This is what we call metadata. So now if somebody wants to just look at videos, filter by, videos only, apply. Now I'm looking at all the videos. I want to clear it out, clear all. And we're back. So you could see that filtering becomes easier. But again, if this is hundreds and hundreds of files, it's still a little problematic. So I created this here, which is just the class documents. Now, what's important to remember here is now that if you notice, this is only showing the class documents. This is what the difference between this and this. These are both sitting in the same document library. This is just another view of that same document library. If you click up here in the views, you'll see all documents. If you click on all documents, we're back to what the other one showed. So I was able to create a view, add the view as a tab, and unbeknownst to any of the users, now you can start seeing the potential for how metadata can be utilized in a more efficient manner. Picture this functionality being used here. Where are we? Yeah, files. Where? No, general. I'm sorry. Hold on one second. General. Picture that being used here, right? And this is going to be the growth pattern that we're going to use for these events. We're going to implement metadata here. We're going to implement a project tracking. We're going to implement a sales PO with workflow. Last thing I want to showcase, where is it? Is it IT support? Let me just double check here. Okay, yeah, IT support. So IT support, again, we have a patching calendar. This is information to let people know when we're doing patching. And again, that would now appear on my calendar. So now I have complete communication to the team of what's going on, and I don't have to send out emails. It will be on their calendar as a patch happening. What I wanted to showcase here is this is what they're currently using for tracking. The tech team is using to track. It's a project tracking system. But what's important here is, again, this is already sitting in the files. So rather than if this becomes the file that you're focusing on with the team, just simply put it in a tab. And now we can have this conversation, and now we can have a discussion. It's a simple go-to point of communication and collaboration. So I know I went through it real quick, just trying to keep time from current slides. Before we move on, are there any questions from anybody?
Tony, you had mentioned workflows being able to help out in the process of these documents and really beyond documents of data. Do you want to say a couple of words about those? I know we don't want to deep dive into them. They will probably have their own their own event at some point if we continue.
Yeah, they will.
The showcase.
Yeah. So again, I'll go back to the HR. Let's go back to the HR situation, right? So in the general HR, this vacation request, right, this could connect to a SharePoint list. And once it connects to a SharePoint list, you can execute a workflow that could process this whole thing. I mean, think about it just from a sales order standpoint, right? What I'd like to do is I'd like to do a PO for this. So salesperson comes in, they have a sales order, they put items into a sales order, and it creates the sales order. You could theoretically have a mobile app that would do the same thing. Mobile apps could then connect to SharePoint very easily with a what I want to highlight again, let me back up a little bit, is Microsoft Office 365 is what I call a configuration development tool. It's not hardcore development. I didn't have to, this was clicks and selections. I didn't have to, yeah, Jennifer, I see that. Yeah, they are overwhelming, Jennifer. I appreciate that comment. And to some level, Jennifer, I wanted it to be overwhelming because I want people to see what it can do. I'm not expecting everybody to remember. What I am expecting is hopefully somebody sees, I remembered this guy talking about something, and kick off that idea. But getting back to this here.
to your point, you don't need to write code unless
Correct.
you want to write code.
Correct.
Right?
Even the more detailed Power Apps. So I can go into a share. Here, let me show you. If I can, let me see. Is the SharePoint still open? I can go to a SharePoint list here. Where is this? Is a SharePoint list. Where is it? Come on, come on, come on. Open. I might have to turn a figure on. Automate. There is an option that basically says create Power App from this. With one click, I can create a mobile application for just this. And it would include all the logic for the edits, the updates, and the deletes. Very simple to do. Um, actually, let me see. Hold on one second. No. Okay. Yeah. So with Microsoft has made it easy. So you can create a Power App directly from a SharePoint list in 2 minutes and download the Power App to your mobile device, and it'll now be there ready for you to use. So think about it logically. The sales team, we do a PO automation. It just contains these basic data elements. The workflow kicks in. You use workflow to create automation. And the good thing about workflow is workflow A can trigger workflow B. So let's say PO comes in. Guy standing in front of a customer, puts in all the pieces of the customer. They're at lunch. Okay, Bob, let me do this for you now. Hit submit. Once it hits the SharePoint list, that sends off an email to somebody in manufacturing and accounting and assigns them tasks. Manufacturing assigns when that PO is going to be able to be produced. Accounting starts the process of engaging them, making sure that we have all their information, we have their account set up, and blah, blah, blah. Those tasks fly out. Those tasks get approved. Let's say manufacturing does go in there and 10 minutes later says, yep, I got the date, I'm going to do it. The guy sitting at lunch can now, his app will notify him that manufacturing has set the date. He now looks at the customer and says, yeah, I just got a reply from manufacturing stating that your order will be ready for March 15th. All of what I just said can be done using O365 with a minimum amount of effort. Okay, like Jennifer had said, it does seem overwhelming, and I highly recommend you start little by little. What I've realized, I've done, I'm going to say hundreds of these type of presentations. When I was at Estee Lauder for 18 years, the only way senior management in IT listened to me about SharePoint is when I did this. I did an app. I did a Power App. I went to a business client. I'm like, listen, would you mind if oh yeah, Tony, this is great. Okay. Then I brought it over to senior management. They're like, oh, SharePoint can do this? And I'm like, yes, it does. So what I'm trying to highlight there, even the professionals in the world don't necessarily know all of the functionality, because as I said in my one slide, it's not a one size fits all solution. I will tell you that SharePoint can integrate. Manny knows about this. So I can put a workflow that could go into your customer relationship database. If there is an integration point, basically APIs, I can go into your CRM, pull data out, and bring it into SharePoint and assign a task to it, and vice versa. I will say most integration points don't allow updates. They're very particular about their data. But again, the integration is there. It's possible. So what I want to do is go back to here, Teams Basics, the next event. So if this is something people are interested in, what we really want to do is start showcasing the other pieces. We want to start walking this journey with splash T's. And we're going to come up with scenarios like the project worksheet, the task tracking, and we're going to showcase things like PowerAutomate, SharePoint lists, site columns, and site content types. Those two are what I refer to as metadata. So we will, in the future, start showcasing how some of this stuff is done. If you don't feel like waiting and you'd like to set up some time to have a conversation with Manny, Chris, and myself and the other team members, by all means, reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to have a conversation with you. That's all I have. I know I ran through it. I was trying to keep it. I actually 9:31. I didn't do too bad with keeping it an hour. I know we had 10, but I started to see people drop off, and I just wanted to make sure that I covered as much as I could cover. I'll leave this point open if anybody wants to discuss and go into more detail, where if you want me to show you how I did something, by all means, we can do that now if you'd like.
So Tony, there actually was a question. Jennifer is asking, do you recommend some first steps or how to come to first steps of adoption, implementation?
So great question. Great question. So I would go back to this slide here. This. I would start, Jennifer, by developing a basic strategy. Right? So you come up with this questionnaire. I send you the questionnaire. You reach out to us. We could literally have a meeting with you and your team and talk about how do you want to start. And the basic starting points, in my opinion, is org structure. Right? If it's teams, it's got to mirror your organization structure. What does that structure look like? And then we start going into, well, does accounting have proprietary files that they don't want the rest of the world to see? Oh, yes, Tony, they do. Okay, that's a lockdown document library. Well, who needs to be in there? Well, we need senior management as well. Okay, now senior management group can have access to it, but I don't want senior management touching it. Okay, boom. So I highly recommend a strategic conversation to start. Don't do what I see a lot of my clients do. Turn to the teams and say, here, set up teams and set up your channels. I think that's a problem. So strategy is the key here. And that could be, I'll be honest with you, this looks like a long time. This questionnaire takes me less than an hour to walk a client through it. But when I'm done, they have a formalized approach of what they want to do. And then in this questionnaire also is the questions about automation. Would you like to have tasks assigned? Would you want those tasks to be analytics, to be able, and that's where the questions start. And then we basically set a timeline. So first you set up teams. And I noticed that in this particular group, they want a project management type tool where they are assigning tasks, and they want, okay, we have a secondary conversation about what that looks like. And then you start implementing that and so forth and so on. Does that clear up your question, Jenna? Okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. She said, gotcha. It makes perfect sense. Also working with a team like yours actually takes out some of the, yes, exactly. Yeah. So Jennifer, yes, it definitely takes, yes. So I didn't want to make this a sales pitch. I promise you, but I do agree. If you can get a partner in there, I don't care who the partner is, that partner is going to be able to guide you and show you the pitfalls. It's like any other partner that you want to partner with. So absolutely, if you know somebody who does this, by all means. If you want to utilize the HIA, by all means, reach out to Manny or Chris, and we'd be very happy to help you guys out. One touching video conferencing, Teams like, so let's look at what John. So John, great info, Tony. Love to use the one touch joint. Yeah, me too. Yeah. So what John is basically saying is Teams has the ability to start a phone call or a meeting right from within the channel itself. Oh, I don't have any people, John, but yeah. So if there was people here and I had people, I could right mouse click. Here, see meet now. So I could select people and say, I want to meet now. When I was in Estee Lauder, I used this feature. Also, another good feature is this has an indicator. If you look up here, this is saying I'm in a meeting. So I used Teams very often to say, okay, well, Bob looks like he's free. Let me do a video chat now with Bob. Boom. And it allows me to not bug Bob when I can see that Bob's on a meeting and trying to get, I mean, that's one of the most frustrating things you can have is somebody trying to get in touch with somebody, especially video chat, right? So it's blinging up, hey, talk to me. And you're like, dude, I'm on a meeting. So again, these are the functionalities. And John, great thing that you pointed it out. Absolutely. Schedule meeting, meet now. These are all little tips and tricks along the way that you could learn.
And to call out something that you had mentioned earlier, Tony, if we have multiple organizations, let's say like with 2M and TechWorks, and we're working together on a project, we can easily join together, share out channels and teams and things like that, so that we can
absolutely,
collaborate easily.
Yeah, Yep. You can even invite guests. I didn't want to go down that path at this point because guests can be problematic. And Manny, you and I have totally seen that. So from a security standpoint, Microsoft has a big security back end, right? So I can invite people to these channels outside the organization if we set it up. What I've done with these channels is based off of the questionnaire. These are all private, meaning you can only get to this by being invited. You can set up a team. I'm sorry. You can set up a team to be public for the organization, meaning anybody in the org can now join that team. I caution against that because then this area here gets inundated with data. I highly recommend the strategy. So our strategy said each of these is going to be private, and when people need access, we will grant them access. I will tell you that senior management has been added to all of them because obviously senior management wants to check up on everybody and make sure everything's going well. So it does. HR, human resources, is another one that's open to the entire company. So the moment you get assigned an Office 365 account and you open Teams, you're in there. So yes, Manny, so you can invite people directly into here. You can share documents. You need to have we have our security person, Andrea. Yeah. So you need to come up with a strategy of how that's going to work. But you can share a document with a link into your OneDrive or just share the document outwardly. I don't want to get into the security conversation about goods and bads, but theoretically, you can invite people in to have this conversation. I mean, if you look at, let's go to here. Is it this one? No. I'm gonna go to accounting. Yeah. So let's say I want to invite somebody in to talk about this balance sheet. I can literally invite them here right now. So now I'm not sending them the document, but I can highlight the document right here, right in front of them. So there is that ability. There's a total ability for integration and a total ability for collaboration. But again, I highly recommend a strategic approach. Do not just hand this off to your teams and say, run, because they're going to get themselves wrapped around an axle, and then they're going to hate the tool. And they're going to come and say, that tool sucks because I couldn't get it to work the way I needed it to work.
Yeah, most definitely. That initial design, even if it's a vision that's not going to be implemented right away, is very important because that kind of drives the bus.
And here's the beauty too. We can move. So let's say Teams has become this big thing and we get things like this QuickBooks and other. I can literally now move this over into a more SharePoint. Let's say SharePoint becomes the whole thing and we have lists that mean to manage it. And so now I'm pushing them towards SharePoint, and you can start to minimize the SharePoint interaction in here and focus less on Teams and more on SharePoint because it's becoming your intranet. That capability is very easy to implement. To Manny's point, you can navigate this and switch this quickly because it's a configuration-based tool. Let's say we have a new process in our PO. It doesn't go from sales right to manufacturing. It goes from sales to an approval process. Well, guess what? All I have to do, if it's built right, is add an approval process. Tell this item to call, instead of calling to go to manufacturer, call the approval, and the approval calls manufacturer. That could be set up in a couple of days. It doesn't require a major effort for someone to come in. It's configuration based. So it's basically click this, drag this, do this. So to Manny's point, this tool you can use to grow your company. So you start off with Teams. You start off with something small. You put 2 or 3 metadata items in there. You get the wow factor from people. Oh, then you start implementing a wider, broader strategy.
All right, now Neil, and thank you, Tony. That's all great stuff, and underscores the fact that proper planning prevents poor performance. Is that the old adage?
Yeah.
Question from Neil that is relevant in in what might be a typical use case. What would be the typical progression for migrating someone off a tool like Slack and into Teams, let's say?
That's a phenomenal question. And where it really comes down to is senior management, right? If senior management doesn't buy into this and allows the multiple tools, then you're never going to have it. So what I will tell you is a lot of the tools have their own little goods and bads, right? When you can have a tool, so let's say they want to use Slack, right? But if this thing is doing automation and including the automation, think about there's an automation process that gives you tasks. And you have on this dashboard here, my open tasks. So every day you see what's assigned to you. Slack really can't do that. Can't automate like that. Can't customize it like that. So you get adoption by the full Office 365 suite, the metadata, being able to customize data points. I mean, how many tools you know can do that? And then be able to showcase different views of that data. So the tool has its capabilities, but if you showcase and integrate the full Office 365 suite, there's no comparisons. For Estee Lauder, they were looking at Google Suite. One of the main CEO, one of the main executive managers came down and says, I want an analysis of Google Suite versus Office 365 because Google Suite was free. And when I did the analysis, no disrespect to any Google people out there, there was no comparison. Every time I mentioned something that Office 365 did, we had a Google rep. We called up Google, he met with us. The answer was you could customize a solution. There are vendors out there that have written certain things, open source, and they're available for you. That was the answer. If you look at Office 365, everything I showed you today is all out of the box functionality. There was no customization other than configuration. That is huge from a tool. And that's how you sell it, Manny. That's how you get people off of, you know, and most of them are using Google, they use Dropbox, Google Drive, and things of that nature. What I also recommend is it becomes a house cleaning effort. Let's say somebody has Dropbox and they have, 45 different folders. It becomes a conversation like, let's clean house a little bit. We're moving this over into SharePoint. And again, how you get them off of it, I can search an individual document internally. I don't know, can Google do that? I mean, inside the document, not just looking for the file name. Search the inside of the document for a particular word. That's major, but you got to showcase that, right? Because the end user, Manny, OneDrive and Google Drive look identical. But OneDrive with SharePoint, OneDrive with process automation, OneDrive with security, and OneDrive with its other features. Oh, no, Google Drive doesn't have that. And no, it doesn't do that. So that's how you get adoption is first of all, you need buy-in from senior management. It's got to be part of your strategy. You're either doing Office 365 or you're not. And if you use the Google products, go ahead. That's great. It's free. God bless you. That's a wonderful thing, and work hard doing it. But you have to have the strategy. The senior management company's got to buy into it. I'm working with a client now, and that's one of their biggest hurdles. They have a sales team that's using everything. And I brought the CEO into a conversation and said, listen, if it doesn't come from you, this ain't going to work. Don't wait. I wouldn't waste your money. It's not worth it to you. So you have to, and they now have to come up with what we call a change management plan. And that is basically, how do I communicate this to the world without appearing negative and appearing, too disruptive and that's, again, another good thing about this particular tool. You can implement it slowly with little disruption. And
right. And I think differentiating the difference between consumer level products like Gmail and some of the Google products and enterprise level products like Office 365, is one of the features that you need to bring out to light, that there are these differences in security, in availability. Some of them, don't even have service level agreements. The free tools essentially never do. But those are all things to call out if you're going to rest your business on some of these products to call those things out. One thing also that you had alluded to was this self-configurable kind of environment that Office 365 sort of showcases and lives within. That almost every one of the Office 365 products has a mobile version of itself, and all of these customizations, all of these configuration options translate to your mobile device. So if you've got Teams running on your tablet or Teams running on your Android device, all of the work that you put into Teams just follows you across the board, and new tabs and new flows, new apps that you've installed, all of that follows you along the way. I think in this day and age where people are looking more and more to work away from their desktop and more wherever they happen to be, I think that's an important point. Tony, what sort of experience have you had with clients, and those mobile aspects of?
So it's funny. Mobile becomes later on down the pipe, right? So you're 100% correct. So what happens is you get the adoption, and all of a sudden people start to say, "Well, wait a minute, there's a mobile app for this," and you pull up the mobile app, and it works the same way. It's identical, and they're like, "Wow, this is pretty cool." And then what I've also noticed, Manny, is mobile always transfers into Power Apps, and I'll tell you why. Once people see the integration and they love the mobile, they want something customized. Tony, I want to be able to see, we have 15 pieces of metadata. It's too big for a mobile. So I can do a couple of things. We'd set up a view that would just be mobile specific, which is a click in SharePoint. You highlight and you check off that this document library is mobile enabled, and it now shows, and you set a view to only show certain columns. But what I inevitably find is that they eventually want some custom app. And that's where Power Apps comes from. I threw together a Power App in a weekend for Estee Lauder as a proof of concept. It had project tracking in there with push notification. It had a sales order where you could order something, and it had a help desk type thing. I wanted to showcase it to three separate departments. When I showcased it, Microsoft rep was there. They brought us into Times Square because no one used Power Apps like that, and it's a fantastic tool. And the reason why I'm pointing it out is I threw it together in a weekend. Right? I mean, it's really now. Granted, Tony is an experienced person in there, but from SharePoint, you can right mouse click and say create Power App, and it will squeeze the entire screen into a formatted mobile device. And in Power Apps, you say it's got to be a tablet or a mobile, and it will resize everything in accordance. And that's one click. That's a single click. And because let's say it's a SharePoint list with data elements. If the data elements are validated, have data validation, like these dates can only be between these 2 points in time. This number can only be between 1 and 5. This item is a drop down of selections. That all transfers over. So think about, with one click, I can get a mobile app, right? And I get the same data validation. I mean, Manny, you know what it would take to create that in your world. If I had to develop a iPhone based app, well, first of all, Power Apps is cross-platformable, right? In our world, I gotta put it out on the iStore, I gotta put it out on the Google Store, and I have two separate code bases generally because of that. So, mobile becomes a very complicated, costly world, whereas in Office 365, you can investigate mobile with a one click. And I'm not trying to oversimplify, but it is literally that. That's how I found out about Power Apps. I was playing around and I saw, oh, what is this? And I opened it up and I said, okay, create Power Apps. Okay, what is that doing? And all of a sudden, this mobile version of it comes, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I downloaded the Power Apps interface, right? You download that to the mobile device. And the great thing is if you set it up correctly, it looks like a native app. So you download the Power Apps mobile application, and then you set up these mobile apps on your phone like a native app, and it will automatically open it up. It'll automatically log you in. It has the same security behind the scenes, all built into it. So yeah, mobile definitely comes into play, Manny, but it comes into play much, much later on, unless in your strategy conversations, mobile becomes a highlighted piece and then you attack it differently.
Well, and it's definitely a great way to extend your intra-company visibility, extension, collaboration among your team members.
Sure. Well, I mean,
There's a it's not necessarily the best for developing an app store app that's used
no,
by consumers, but it's
correct.
terrific for putting together, hey, you want to check in on you want to enter orders while you're out in the field as my
Correct.
sales rep. Beautiful. It's a great tool for it.
And the infrastructure is already set up.
Right, go.
And the infrastructure is already set up, right?
Correct.
So if I want to do a mobile app, I got to most likely have a database. It's got to be set up behind the scenes. PowerApps, the mobile platform, will go right. It talks right to SharePoint, and it
Right.
can talk to any item in the Dataverse.
And any item in the Dataverse, which is a full-fledged database
Correct.
that exists, within the Office 365 world. Your licensing may vary, but
Correct.
it's out there and it is available. One of the quiet parts of our plate today has been Power BI, and we could have a whole nother session on Power BI, but that's another very powerful element within the Office 365 suite that allows you to pull together data from all these sources. That's one of its
Correct.
suite sources, right? And
Yeah.
and allows you to pull together disparate data sources and provide reporting and KPIs and dashboards and a lot of other really cool stuff. I think it all really helps to extend out Office 365 as kind of like your collaboration hub for your
Yeah.
for your
That's
business.
exactly the point I try to explain. But Jennifer makes an extremely important point: is it's all overwhelming. So what happens is companies try on their own, they get overwhelmed, and they drop it. And then Zoom comes back into the game because that's the fallback, and Google Suite comes back into the game because that's the fallback. So yes, is it overwhelming? It's 100%. It's overwhelming for me sometimes because I get so excited. There's so many things to do that your mind starts to really, I have to control myself meeting the first time with a client because I want to push everything.
Yeah.
But, I got to be careful because I'm going to overwhelm them like I'm doing today. But again, today was more about just putting ideas out in somebody's head. That's really what I wanted to try to get across today. And I'm going to keep this. This is hosted on my site. I will keep this. And if people want, we will then keep moving this series along to start encompassing, Manny, to your point. My thought is I'm going to set up a PO that's going to have a workflow that's going to send it to manufacturing, and I'm going to have a Power App mobile app. That's the plan for this, to showcase where this can go. And what we did today is a good starting point, right? Start with Teams. So you got to decide where you want to start. Is Teams going to be the push button, or is a corporate intranet going to be the push button? Either or those work. But if it's Teams, this is the type of thing you do. You add tabs. You add you create a simple page. You create a simple page that has the vendor links. This is just something easier for the end user. So now the end user goes in and says, oh, you know what? I'm just going to go to Teams. They look for it in their favorites. They try to find it. They can't find it, whatever. Boom. It's there. Utilize the tabs in Teams to get the adoption. And then you put in things like metadata, and you put in other things, and you grow it and you grow it and you grow it.
Very good stuff. Great presentation, Tony. I appreciate it. To sort of echo what Tony has said already, we're looking for feedback. If you guys want to continue this journey down and looking at different aspects of Office 365, or really any of the these products that can be used by small businesses and medium businesses and large businesses too. But large businesses typically have the wherewithal to be able to handle it, implement it, and do it internally or contract.
Well, I will tell you, Manny, that a most recent client is a larger, what I'll call mid to large size company with an IT department. I'm not going to mention the name, but with an IT department, a large enough staff, and they still didn't know, because most of the IT department is desktop support, user management, and things of that. Even some of the, like I said, Estee Lauder. I had to do a proof of concept in order to get senior management to see value.
Well, I have to do a small commercial for PowerApps, formerly known as Flow. To me, it's kind of the the hidden crown jewel of the Office 365, because I think people miss how powerful it is, and it's extremely powerful and can help to get
You mean
a lot
Power Automate? You mean Power
Power
Automate?
Automate. I'm sorry,
Yeah,
to get to
absolutely.
get stuff off your desk, and let the system, help you out with performing some of these tasks that a human doesn't necessarily add value to.
And to add
Right.
on top of that, Power Automate can be used within SharePoint, but Power Automate has now have a desktop tool.
Yeah.
Where you can now start performing desktop operations. So let's say you have a function every day. You're, let's say, sending out an invoice to XYZ on a daily basis. I don't know why you would do it, but you could. You could set up the desktop to pull up the app, fill in certain data elements. You identify the data elements that you want to fill in, and it will actually do the work for you with a single click. So, Manny, you're 100% correct. If you watch where Microsoft is going, Power Automate is going to be that next big thing that they're going to push. Absolutely 100%. And most companies don't see the value, but they know they have process automation. Like when I'll go to a client, I'll say, okay, so what do you do? Well, Sam goes out into the field and he pulls in a PO, creates the PO, and he gives it over to Samantha, who logs it into our system. And then Samantha sends it over to accounting for processing. That's a process. I can automate that entire thing. Now, you don't leave the people out. I'm just improving the automation. And on top of that, I can now put analytics. Well, how long did it take to go from sales to processing, and then from processing over to accounting? How long did each member take during that process?
Yeah, opens up a lot of possibilities, man. And Power Automate Desktop comes with Windows 10, Windows 11. So, you've already got the application there. Again, your licensing may vary. That's a presentation in and of itself, I think. Do we have any more questions at this point?
I was actually
Manny?
going to say, it
Oh.
looks like sorry.
I was going to just jump in and add a couple of points. I concur that with Tony that some big organizations may not have the wherewithal to fully understand. I'm experiencing one right now. But I would want to emphasize the collaboration with teams. You can open files with the app, and you can have people concurrently working on a file at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's managed really well. It works. And also because it's using Office 365, you've got Exchange there. And with the automation that Manny and Tony were talking about, it's really easy for external people to submit an email to a mailbox and then for you to process that with the automation behind it.
Correct. That's a whole sophistication of, yes, absolutely correct, Andy.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
there's,
and that's a good point. I didn't even get to the file sharing capabilities because I just thought that people understood it natively, but you're 100% correct. It's managing all the files natively, and it's managing who does what where, and you can set it up so that you have version control, meaning I think the default is 5 versions. So think about that logically. If Bob goes in and screws the whole darn thing up, I can go back into version and pull up yesterday's version and get it back without having to call Microsoft, without having to do anything. It's just natively in there. So absolutely correct. That's all the back end stuff that OneDrive and brings to the table. But yes, you're correct.
Yeah, and I just want to emphasize.
Well,
Sorry.
I'm sorry about that. A built-in recycle bin as well. That if you try and work across a standard network share and delete a file, it ain't anything. It's gone. Because it's all backed up by SharePoint. You've got a built-in recycle bin that you can
Absolutely.
one of those oops moments.
And again, that's not even calling Microsoft, right? There is a recycle bin for every list and library out in SharePoint. Absolutely 100%. But you got to know what you're doing, but you could theoretically absolutely pull a record directly out of the recycle bin. Yes. So there are multiple options if things go awry.
All right, cool. Well, Tony, thank you for this enlightening presentation. Thank you to everybody that attended and who had input, questions, whatever else. But just hopefully you picked up a hint or two about what Teams and Office 365 can do for you. If you're interested in continuing the series, we've already had some people say they'd like to continue it, but I think it's we want to hear from your feedback. We want to hear from about what points maybe excite you and what you want to hear about next. So, you know, on behalf of Chris and myself, I want to thank everybody for coming by and for taking a little bit of your morning out, and hopefully the day turns out a little bit more cheerful than the weather started, right? And special thanks to Tony for this great presentation.
Well, I appreciate you guys giving me this opportunity. I really love talking about Office 365. So any opportunity I can get to talk about it and maybe educate, I just love it. So thank you so much for the opportunity. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day. And
Have a good one, everyone.